everyone, and welcome to another Scots Whay podcast. And this is one of the themed podcasts that we do every now and again. We've done one on Stevenson, on Scott. We've done a few Burns casts over the years, and this is going to be about Muriel Spark. And I'm joined today by Dr Colin McIlroy, who is the National Library of Scotland's curator of the International Style of Muriel Spark exhibition. And Brodie, hello Colin.
Hello, how you doing, Alan? Thanks for having me along.
No problem. That's a huge title, but just maybe break that down a bit. What's your job for the last year? Is that how long you've been doing it?
I've been doing it now 2.5 years.
Is it?
2.5 years, yeah.
On this project?
Well, I guess it's kind of the two main strands of the project are to catalogue the archive, which, given its humongous size, is an ongoing project.
We should probably set out what the before we go on to talk about the exhibition.
Yeah.
This is Muriel Spark, the centenary of her birth.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of things that have happened over the year and will continue to happen for the rest of the year,
indeed.
Celebrating her centenary.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the major ones, and the one which you were involved in, was the International Style of Muriel Spark exhibition.
Yes.
So
So that opened December of last year, and it just closed a few weeks ago. May the 13th was the last day. So I guess sort of 5.5 months. Yeah, really just trying to use the archive to really tell Muriel Spark's life story through the archive, and really just be part of the whole Muriel Spark centenary. The Muriel Spark 100 has really been bringing together lots of people just to kind of try and, give her the sort of the due. That she's such a phenomenal writer, such a phenomenal figure, and I think really a recognition by lots of individuals and sort of cultural institutions. Whether it's universities, whether it's broadcasters, to really make the most of the Spark centenary, and we've been part of that as well with the exhibition, but also doing lots of sort of collaborations with people, and alongside Creative Scotland, we have had a coordinator just to kind of help bring all these people together, which has been great. And then of course with the library, we acquired the archive over the years, and so that's what the exhibition has grown out of.
So you were already at the library archiving Muriel Spark, curating and stuff, and then the idea of this exhibition came up then, or was it always
planned?
Going to happen?
I started at the library at the end of 2015, and they knew that, with the centenary approaching, that there would be an exhibition, and that they would bring someone in to kind of ideally list and get to know the archive, and then out of that curate the exhibition. So I didn't think I was in with a shout of getting in there at the National Library, because I don't have any background in cataloguing or archiving, but sort of somewhat fortuitously, having studied Spark, they seemed to,
So for those who have sadly missed it, because as you say it's not long finished, give a bit of the content of it. It was broken down, if I remember rightly, because I saw it right at the beginning, broken down into the places that she was linked with, is that right?
Yeah, well, I remember speaking to people at the library who'd been involved in exhibitions before, and they said when you're telling a life story, if you can try and do it thematically as opposed to just a kind of chronological, this is when they were born, and running through the story of their life. Looking at Muriel Spark's life, it seemed that it could divide it up fairly clearly into the areas in which she lived. She was born, grew up in Edinburgh, and then at the age of 19 she moved to then Southern Rhodesia, as it was at the time, spent short period of time there, but a really important period of time, and then towards the end of the Second World War she came back. She moved to London at this point and was trying to establish herself as a writer, and that was the case and through to the sort of early 60s, and then New York, she moved there for a while, and then she came back to Europe, moved to Rome, and then spent the last few decades in Tuscany. And it seemed like an easy way to kind of divide up her life story by those areas, and trying to think about how those areas influenced her writing, and be able to show those as kind of an aspect of the exhibition I hadn't thought of previously. I was only thinking of the content in terms of which writers, which pieces of correspondence we show, who were the writers that you wanted, who were my favourites, what pieces of the archive told the story, but of course she was such a kind of stylistic individual. She was so concerned with style that the designers would come in and say, well, we can kind of recreate what her flat might have looked like in Rome in the late 60s and early 70s, and that in a way tells a story visually that allows people to then read what's on display and almost feel in each section sort of embedded within an era or a time.
Yeah, I mean, aside from it being about Muriel Spark, it's a real kind of social, cultural history of a woman in the 20th century, how she changes, it goes from the little girl at school in Edinburgh to, as you say, she has all these kind of quite glamorous changes as the fashions changed as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and it seemed that aspect should be brought out in a way that people could just react to visually and be in that at the same time as they could then read the correspondence from, whether it's Graham Greene or the childhood poems, as you say, when she's at James Gillespie's and it's Miss Christina Kay says, Spark says that in curriculum vitae it was almost predestined, that great theme that recurs throughout her work, that Miss Kay said, you're the school's poet and dreamer and you will be a writer. And so you have those examples and you can see the material that she's written, you can see the manuscripts, all of that side of it, but it seemed to try and make herself come alive through not just the documents within the archive, but trying to create a sense of time and space and place in which she was writing.
Yeah, it was when I was walking around it, it was fairly busy, and you did hear people not just who were there to perhaps see the letters and stuff like that, but go, oh, my auntie used to wear that, when back in the day, or
that's great.
That was my school uniform. It was like that. And everything. I
would always point out to people, attention to detail of designers and say, look, in the sort of London part, look at the carpet, it looks like my granny's carpet, and everyone would go, so it does. Yeah, it's totally of that era, And it's funny, you see pictures of Spark in that era, and sometimes it's it's the 2-bar electric fire behind, and the furniture is of that time.
So I mean, you studied Spark, as you said. What did doing the exhibition and actually working with the archive? What new things emerged for you then?
In terms of her personality, I think what emerged was undoubtedly she locked horns with people and she would fall out with people occasionally, but she's much warmer, kinder, more generous, almost the majority of the time, and that I think is I perhaps had allowed some of the negative things that had been written about her to kind of filter into to what I was expecting. And even although there are times when she does stand up for herself, she does, fall out with people, the majority of the time you've got someone who's just predominantly hilarious, unbelievably smart, gets on really well with lots of people, and that, it was probably sad to say that I was kind of surprised by that, but which is great because, I can imagine that Spark is the only writer whose archive I've really worked with in any kind of depth, but her life is so interesting that I can imagine working with other writers where you think the writing's fantastic but there's not really much of interest in the archive, whereas with Spark you do have a lot of intriguing stuff going on.
So let's talk a little bit about reputation. As you say, there was a kind of reputation. I'm not entirely sure where it came from, except that she, certainly in later years, was fairly reclusive, and I think probably always private.
Yeah.
Which, nowadays people want to know everything about everyone, but so was she never kind of kowtowed to that?
No, not at all. I mean, there's a letter where I can't remember the instance during the 60s, and she's sort of accused in one of the newspapers of being part of the literary scene, and she says, I rent a house in Camberwell. I couldn't be further away from the trendy parts of London if I tried. I don't do the whole socialising side of things in that term. I mean, I think she did, but she did it in her own terms.
Yes.
In terms, that she wasn't out there being seen at the right parties. If she was out and about, then that would be on her own, kind of, seeing the people she wanted to see and spend it. It wasn't the kind of, you need to be in the literary circle, or. Yeah.
So do you think that she is better, because I think she is one of the best writers of the 20th century, right across the board, no matter where she's come from. But I do get the feeling, and the exhibition kind of confirmed that she's maybe better considered internationally than nationally.
Perhaps so. Hopefully we have some small, effect on that. Hopefully this year we'll have some kind of reappraisal of her standing, as you say, nationally. I think, I get the impression from working through the archive that she probably was held in higher regard down south in the States and certain parts of Europe as well, than perhaps she has been here in Scotland. Again, but it's difficult to quantify that.
Yes.
That's just a sense of reading through some of the materials.
Yeah. I still think, and it's in the exhibition as well, but perhaps she's known for, if at all, for the Prime Miss Jean Brodie. That's the one that everyone kind of knows her for.
Yeah.
And obviously the film version kind of took on a life of its own as well, and it's much loved. Which and Berlin, I think, are republishing all 22 of her novels. Is that right?
Yeah.
So from those 22 novels, if you say, well, the Prime Miss Jean Brodie, where else would you suggest people go? What's your...
I have great difficulty narrowing this down, because I love so many of the books. I think The Comforters is just an astonishing debut.
Comforters was our debut.
And it's almost the joke at the time was that almost as though the Muriel found novel writing came to her so easily that she almost had to make it more difficult. So she tackles, not only the sort of novel within a novel, but the whole notion of what it is to be a writer in the first novel. Kind of fractured psyche and elements of the supernatural and all of this, whilst the main protagonist is writing a book on the novel in the 20th century. I mean, it's as jokingly postmodern as you could get, albeit at the same time she never fits into those categories. So I love The Comforters. I think Memento Mori is the premise of the book being about remember you must die, sitting in an old folks' home, and yet it still manages to be funny. How many writers would be skillful enough to make that happen? Brodie, The Girls of Slender Means, perhaps the archetypal Spark novel. I love The Mandelbaum Gate because it's the most non-archetypal Spark novel.
Right. What's The Mandelbaum Gate? That's one I haven't read.
Mandelbaum Gate, the main character, Barbara Vaughan, and what intrigues me is that one of the letters that I came across recently in the archive is Spark writing to her publisher saying, whereas in the past people have said, certain characters like Caroline Rose in The Comforters or January Marlowe in Robinson, may be based upon Spark herself.
Yeah.
She actually says that's not the case, but Barbara Vaughan is me. It's the one time where she's essentially at this point kind of fessed up to saying, I'm writing myself this character, because in 61 Spark visited the Holy Land, visited Jerusalem, Palestine, Israel, and many of the kind of experiences that Barbara Vaughan goes through Spark went through as well. But this letter was written in 61. Who knows between then and 65 when the novel was published how much that changed, but she said, this is me, but I'm making everything round about it fictional in terms of the characters and whatnot, but certainly a lot of the events that happened in the novel happened to Spark. But it's it's pitched as a kind of realist spy fiction extended narrative, as opposed to her really sort of truncated, those slices of fiction that she narrows down, as she said after writing it, that she keep it short and make them laugh.
Did coming across letters like that or correspondence where suddenly it made you look at the novels in a different way, or at least opened up some kind of truth behind them?
That in that case, yes. In the terms of the rest of the novels, I think you would have to sort of piece together an entire jigsaw of fragments from within the letters and the correspondence. There's not the big reveal, there's not the Rosetta Stone that says, here's the decoding, here's how you decode, because she didn't work that way. And I don't think anything could do that. I don't think her writing is is it's so complex and is so multi-layered that there's no one single thing to be decoded, as it were. But certainly it's intriguing to me that, and in the exhibition we borrowed the manuscript of the Prayer of Miss Jean Brodie from Tulsa, and the author's note that came with that, she went to the point of saying that the book, even although it's set in Edinburgh and set in the same time that she was at school in Edinburgh and was growing up, that it's not disguised autobiography. And it would be a blow to her pride of invention if anyone thought so. And I think the one bugbear that I maybe have when it comes to commentary and criticism in Spark is that she is her characters.
Yeah.
And I think that does such a huge disservice to her sort of imaginative, creative powers. You know, and when I read that regarding the Mandelbaum Gate, thinking, well, she is saying that Barbara Vaughan is a version of her, but she's at pains to say that, you know, the other characters that are invented, many of the circumstances of the book are from her creative imagination.
Well, some of the characters are so extreme anyway. I mean, Jean Brodie's extreme, and Lise in the driver's seat is incredible. I mean, to say it's autobiographical is wild.
yeah, absolutely. You wouldn't want to. But I think, and I remember another person pointing out that, you know, on those cases where you read something that you've heard Spark say in an interview, this is a truth, this is something, this is about how I approach writing, or this is a certain truth, those ideas crop up in the mouths of the villains and the really dubious characters. You know, it's almost as like she's so ego-less in her writing that she can, you know, put her own words into the mouths of the kind of characters that anyone else would want to make themselves look good and put them into the, you know, the hero, or the, you know, the characters that look good or sound good. Whereas Spark's like, no, I'll give them good ideas to the real, you know, the ne'er-do-wells.
She was well thought of by other writers, and you had quite a lot of correspondence with other writers, such as...
Doris Lessing, Iris Murdoch, John Updike, Beryl Bainbridge, George Mackay-Brown, Candia McWilliam, Graham Greene, Evelyn Waugh. I mean, just Christine Brooke-Rose, And that's the kind of company that I think, you know, she deserves to be seen in, without a doubt. Yeah.
So if someone is coming to Spark, not having read any of Spark, what kind of would you tell them to expect? What would you kind of expect?
That's tricky. I would suggest that they expect not... that they shouldn't. Perhaps it's easier to say what they shouldn't expect. That might be the best way.
Sure.
Thinking, don't expect straight realism, albeit there's aspects of that. Expect there to be very dark, bleak humour, deep theological and philosophical questions, which I won't attempt to wade into, the kind of comedy coming from a...
I was going to say, I think that's what people maybe don't expect. It's just how funny a lot of it is. I recently read The Abysses of Crewe for the first time, because we were looking at the films of Spark, and that was turned into a film called That's the Abbots.
That's right, I still have your DVD in the house.
That's alright. But it's political, it's about Watergate. And it's just, instead of it being a political satire, it is a political satire, but that's set where the next abbess has to be voted in, so there's all these kind of political machinations going on in the Catholic Church, which I'm sure must have been down a treat as well.
But that was one of the first things that struck me was that reading Spark and knowing the part of the biography that she'd become a Catholic in 1954, and you know, the only writer that I've ever come across that doesn't read like Spark, but in terms of the tone of the work, that seems vaguely reminiscent is Flannery O'Connor. Right. And what strikes me in common with both of them is certainly, and in Spark's books, is that, you know, Catholics more often than not, again, are the worst characters in the book. You know, there's a bit in The Comforters where the main character, Caroline Rose, she's going through that same process and thinking about converting, but her worry is, if I convert to Catholicism, will I become like them? You know, and you think, you know, this is Spark, who, you know, made those kind of off the cuff or those comments about, you know, I wouldn't go to mass until after the sermon because I couldn't stand a third-rate production, and that's not in her book. That's her. That's not in her writing. You know, but it's, you know, that the humour that she's scathing about aspects of Catholicism in the same way that she's scathing about, politics, and she's scathing about, obviously with, as you're mentioning, the Abbess of Crewe, Watergate. But I think it's the humour that she brings to it that means that you can read that without thinking it's not an all-out assault on any spiritual belief. It
was interesting recently when a showing of The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie in Edinburgh, and watching it with an Edinburgh audience. Now, I've been in an audience in Glasgow and watched it, and everyone, kind of laughs and it's a great film and all that. But in Edinburgh, they were really, it was the funniest thing you've ever heard, because the one-liners that are in there are just so Edinburgh and so precise. It was great to see people just, having and that's when it got to me. This stuff is really funny. Absolutely. If it can make a full room of people laugh out loud like that, it's got to have something going for it.
I should point out that was a great introduction as well that you did.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
So you have been on a bit of that night was a good example. You've been involved in lots of these events that have kind of been going on. Can you tell us about some of the things you've been doing?
Well, in addition to the exhibition, we've been involved in, for example, there was the academic symposium, which was jointly organised with the library and the University of Glasgow, and we had people coming from Japan, from the States, from Italy, Germany, Spain, to come and talk about Spark. That was fantastic. And yet, funnily enough, we showed the film on the opening night of that as well. When I think about it, people really enjoyed it, but there wasn't the same laughter as there was a West Coast audience as opposed to an East Coast. So that kind of thing. There's been we've had lots of writers coming to the library. Candy McWilliam was there to talk. You mentioned the Polygon, the Berlin, the 22 new editions, and quite a lot of the people involved in writing the new introductions have been along.
Every book has its own introduction. Too many, 22 of them.
22, absolutely.
One of which is Alan Taylor, who I should say he's had a book out as well. Issued an appointment in Arezzo, a friendship with Muriel Spark, and he's been very heavily involved with.
Absolutely, Alan's been the hardest working man in show business. He's and it's been brilliant.
I could see him carried off the stage with
the cape,
Brown.
But he has, and it's been fantastic. And I think I read a review by Brian Morton, and he said, in fact, it wasn't Brian Morton that wrote the review, it was Alan Massey in The Scotsman, and he said it's really nice to have a book that kind of wears its heart on its sleeve, is honest about the fact, I was a huge fan and friendly with Muriel, and this is an affectionate portrayal as opposed to anything else. We've had plenty of biographies of writers that seem to set out with the kind of goal in mind of revealing everything that you wouldn't want revealed. Whereas Alan's book, I think, doesn't shy away from some of the sort of controversial aspects or so-called controversies in Muriel's life, but it is an affectionate portrayal. And I think for people who've read that book, I think that they get to see what I probably get to see on a daily basis in the archive, which is predominantly someone who's just really kind, generous, witty, funny, incredibly talented, an amazing interest in everything, and that's what comes through, I think, in Alan's book.
I think that's right. It doesn't pretend to be anything it's not.
No.
And if folk are looking for some kind of whiff of scandal, then it's not the right place.
No.
But then that's something, as I say, she's obviously been a very private person throughout her life, and sometimes for good reason. Failed marriage, difficult to say the least relationship with her son. And it's not hidden.
No.
But it's like, and that dear reader will stay behind the door. But, I think is absolutely fair enough.
Yeah, but I mean, in Alan's
as the exhibition did as well. Like.
Well, I mean, we touched on the subject, all of those areas that you mentioned. It's, but in a way, I kind of felt like there was a whole series of dialogue, a whole series of coverage that had been out there over the years, and rather than dwell on those aspects of things, simply present her life story in a way that people could then make up their own mind regarding, how they felt about those. We didn't want to get into in too much depth, because what I find about all of that side of things is that it gets away from the writing and it gets away from her a little bit, and none of that seemed to be particularly illuminating regarding her writing or other aspects of her life. I don't know. The approach that we took was really just to try and, draw people back to the writing, show that she had this really interesting life, try and be fair, and that, hopefully it wasn't just hagiography. It was showing that, at certain times, as I said, she wouldn't see eye to eye with people, as you mentioned, the relationship with her son. But at the same time, these are things that if she was a male writer, we wouldn't even be mentioning.
Yeah.
It's a real double standard that, that exists and continues to exist.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't mean you wouldn't be, I just mean that, everyone, they wouldn't even,
no, that's interesting in itself then. So putting together the exhibition, did you have that in the back of your mind? That this was a female writer rather than a male writer? And
Yeah, I think it was
because there were the exhibitions of, well, here's a pair of specs or here's a such. You might not do that if it was that. You might do it if it was Alistair Gray, if you wanted his Cardi or something like that. But
I mean, I like to think that we were asked that, would you have outfits of a male writer? And I think, well, if
it was Tom Wolfe, you definitely would have.
Perfect. Case in point. And Muriel throughout her life talked about, from the point where she worked in William Small's after she left school, how important fashion and dress was to her, how important it is in her novels. How important style, her love of visual art, her love of design, her love of clothing, and when you do think about clothes in the book, and you think about how important they are. Whether it's Jean Brodie educating the girls on what they should wear, or even Miss Kay in Curriculum Vitae saying on a summer day one should wear grey with a citron berry, which is 15 parts yellow and 1 part blue. I mean, it's super specific regarding colour and dress and art, and that's the way throughout her entire career. And whether it's Lisa's sort of garish outfit in order to be seen, she is very much
must be able to be wiped clean as well. In that,
indeed, and as my friend Big Raymond pointed out, as it hadn't occurred to me as well, it doesn't stain. And you're talking about the stain of original sin and all sorts of things that I hadn't even contemplated. But that idea that fashion can be self-expression, but it can also be part of self-negation. It can be camouflage, it can be self-expression, it can be the form of hiding, it can be the form of notice me. Spark's always fascinated, when you think of the Schiaparelli dress and the Girls of Slender Means as a kind of motif that runs the whole way through it. It's always been crucial to her writing, and I think in Alan Taylor's book he says, when you see pictures of Muriel, she's chameleon-like, and the story goes she would go to the hairdressers and say, make me look different.
Yeah, I mean, there are. I'm just looking at the website now, but for each section you've got a different picture of her. One in Rome, London, Africa, Edinburgh. Obviously, she's a kid, but it could be different women in nearly everyone, and not just in the terms of style. As you say, there is this almost chameleon-like sense of I want to change. Just as part of her was obviously in her characters, but as you say, you don't make direct comparisons, and she was constantly changing herself.
Well, I think and again, Alan Taylor had mentioned that that kind of approach to how she looked. There was a corresponding approach in that she didn't write the same book twice. She was always, each book was a new challenge and a new approach. And even although there are elements of her style, that you can think of as running through her novels, she doesn't return, to the same place. She doesn't return to the same characters or the same plots. And I think, that determination to write something fresh, something new each time, when you see that correlation, that is, having criticised the kind of biographic approach, now, guilty of the very same thing, but it does seem as though that was an aspect of her personality, which was to not repeat yourself and to not go back over and to try and break new ground.
You said The Comforters was the debut novel, but I'd like to go back before that, because I think that's the kind of, I almost said the spark, I'm going to not do that.
It's inevitable. Yeah,
but the beginning of her life as a writer, you said at school, she was told you will be a writer, in the same way that Jean Brodie would maybe pronounce,
Yeah. Well, we certainly, we did the first sort of material that we have from sort of 1930, 31, you know, there's evidence that she was writing from poetry from 1929. She's born in 1918, so by the age of sort of 11, 12, she's writing poems, and she's been published in Gillespie's school magazine. And there's a great edition, I think it's the 1931, where they write little paragraphs saying, you know, normally we would only give one poem to any of the pupils, but Muriel Camberg, as she was at that age, you know, is such a talent that we're giving her 5 poems, you know. And you think, you know, it's like you've just made it into high school. You've got, you know, the students who are 5, 6 years older than you, and here are you getting 5 poems while they only get 1. And it's amazing to read them. You know, they're just unbelievably brilliant for someone at that age.
And her first kind of, when she came to recognition, a wider recognition, was short stories, wasn't it? Was the Seraph and Zambezi? Was that
Seraph and Zambezi? Yeah, the very one. Yeah, the Observer Short Story Contest, 1951, which she. The archive, we do have a couple of sort of fragments of short stories that she'd written before then, but this was the first short story that she'd actually submitted anywhere. She was being published in poetry magazines, and she'd been working at the Poetry Society and editing the Poetry Review, and she was garnering a reputation as a poet and an editor. But this was the first, the short story that she submitted.
That
she
was
won.
The first thing I ever read.
Right, okay.
And then I've read the short story collection before I'd read any of the novels.
Yeah.
And they are just incredible. You know, we were talking about the novels on the whole here, but you should check out her short stories. They are just fantastic.
And I love, it seems that in the short stories, she quite a lot of the early ones were submitted to kind of those magazines that were somewhere, the overlap between mystery and detective. You know, and when you think about those genres, that those are 2 areas that she returns to throughout her fiction, but especially in the short stories, you find variations on the detective ghost kind of surreal fiction. Yeah. You know, and lovely for me, lots of fiction about archives and executors and estates and all that kind of stuff. You know, you can get really busman's holiday about the whole thing.
I think that the supernatural, for want of a better term, is something else you probably wouldn't expect in a Muriel Spark book.
And again, that's what you would sort of tell people to expect. That, and it's that curious way that she uses the supernatural, in that, you know, I remember reading a review of David Lynch and I think it was David Foster Wallace, where he was talking about, you know, the standard line on David Lynch is that he shows, you know, white picket fence America, and then this really dark, surreal, you know, subterranean existence. And he said that's a misreading. In fact, Lynch tells you that the dark surrealism is on the surface as well. And in a way, that applies to Spark. She doesn't make a delineation between, you know, Dougal Douglas's bizarre trickster behaviour in the Ballad of Peckham Rye as being supernatural in a way that doesn't coexist with day-to-day life. You know, he's in there doing his industrial espionage, and, you know, ruining people's lives and making other people's lives better at the same time. And you know, in a way, that approach to the supernatural it's not, you know, it's not a kind of trite, you know, use of ghosts or spooks for thrills and spills. It's a theological underpinning.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, and it coexists. You know, as far as she's concerned, the natural and the supernatural, there's no major distinction.
I also get the sense that she takes writing very seriously, but she found life absurd. And that's kind of what
absolutely.
She writes down, and that always comes through. So after, you know, getting the Seraph the Zambezi, her writing just seemed to take off, because then you suddenly got...
There was a little lull in that was 51, very end of 51, so into 52, she was still... It was 51 she published Child of Light, the fantastic book on Mary Shelley, and I think those books on Mary Shelley and the Brontes, Emily Bronte in particular, you know, are starting to garner the kind of attention they deserve. And she did, there was Tribute to Wordsworth book with Derek Stanford on John Henry Newman and John Masefield, the former poet laureate. So throughout that period, when she was doing poetry and criticism, she was also doing these, you know, books, biography or critical biography or works of criticism, depending on your angle. From 50, sort of, when she won the Seraph and the Zambezi, it then took a little while for the first novel to come out. She had planned the first release to be a book of short stories, and she writes to her editor Alan MacLean around about 1954, 55 to say, I'm now thinking this might work better or become a novel. He's like, if we'll trust you if you want to go ahead and do that. So there is a period in between where she did suffer some ill health, 53 and 54, and so I think that probably slowed things down. But she was still publishing, as I said, in all these mystery magazines. Poems were being published, detective magazines, where you think, oh, I'm going to get a story about whatever kind of detective. Next thing you know, it's a ghostly detective with a surreal supernatural thing going on, and you're thinking this is not what you'd expect. But by 57, when The Comforters comes out, she's sort of back on track health wise, and right to pretty much the end, isn't it? She's still being published, finishing school's the last book. 2004. She died in 2006. So so at which point her last book was published. She died when she was 88, so she was still being published at age 86, and she was still writing.
Do you think there's almost too much stuff? And what I mean by that is, often writers who are critically lauded, they'll have, maybe a shorter back catalogue to someone. She was just writing and writing and writing. And it's all of a very high quality.
Yeah. Perhaps, I don't know. I mean, I think the sort of critical consensus is that, the years from The Comforters, perhaps through maybe Loitering with Intent in 81, would have been perceived as her last great novel, although again that's just a perception, and the really brilliant ones were from 57 up until the early 70s.
That's our kind of Purple Rain to Alphabet Street, that kind of thing. Because it's something that said The Prince as well, although there was almost too much music. And then
perhaps. I mean, but I do think you mentioned The Finishing School, and I think it's tonally different. Again, the novels do tend to differ, and it's quite scathing. She talked about satire and ridicule, but it's kind of a gentler satire and ridicule towards the end. But I think things like Symposium in 1990, and then aiding and abetting about taking the Lucan story and going with that. I think some of the late works are brilliant as well, but I understand that the critical consensus is more the earlier.
I'm asking that kind of with my tongue in my cheek, because everything I've read of, and I haven't read anywhere near the 22, but everything I have read of, absolutely love, and I'm looking forward to kind of completing the set eventually. But the prime of Miss Jean Brodie stands out, and it's a great book, and everyone should read it. But I think that's a shame when maybe one overshadows.
Perhaps.
Maybe it's just a wrong perception, but it seems to be.
Certainly, and of course, she talked about that herself. Jean Brodie, as Thomas Hardy had said about Tessa d'Urberville's an old milch cow. That's what keeps the that's what keeps the the checks coming in and the money rolling in, and so I'm sure Muriel probably appreciated that. But perhaps there's a tendency for that to overshadow how brilliant the rest of her work is.
So the all the stuff that was in the exhibition, is that just now put back into storage? Is that what happens next?
We borrowed some of it. The manuscripts for The Driver's Seat and The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie are already back in Tulsa. Penelope Jardine, Muriel's great friend and long-time compadre, we're returning some of the items she loaned us, some of the personal things like, the typewriter and, the rosary beads and the memento mori, the scary skull sort of necklace, and dresses and the designer handbags and whatnot. Some of them are going back, although very kindly she said that we can hold on to some of them as well. But the majority of the material that was on display in terms of the correspondence and the letters, that goes back into our shelves in the National Library.
And are you working on something that you can tell us about next?
Well, it's a matter of, there's another 33 boxes arrived from Tuscany for the Golden Fleece, the collection of essays that was published in 2014 that Penelope edited, but of course featuring work from throughout Muriel's life. So we've just received another 33 boxes, so there's never a shortage of material to be. In terms of cataloguing, there's hundreds and hundreds of boxes, and I'm still, a long way to go in terms of cataloguing it, and so that when you can go online or come to the library and see an inventory, and instead of just being faced with, oh, I'm going to have to take 6 months of research leave and work through this, we can pinpoint where you would go. That's trying to make that happen.
So if someone is listening to this now and they think, I missed that, I really wanted to kind of see something, they can go to the library and search, and just as you would.
Sure, you come along, you just you get a reader's card, you just need a couple of forms of ID, take your picture, and then you can go to into the reading rooms, and you can call up this material, and you can see all of these letters that I can't believe I get the chance to see them on a daily basis,
Because I think there will be people that maybe come because of everything that's going on this year, start reading and want to know a bit more and kind of want to.
I've since the exhibition closed, there were people in contact saying, I wish I'd made it along. Can I come along and see, what was on display? And you say, well, yeah, most of it, as we've just talked about, some of it is no longer in the country, but most of it is here. And it's accessible. The public can access it.
So, did you have a favourite piece in the exhibition? That's
a favourite piece. Again, it's like Spark's novels. I realised when you asked me, where to start, I probably said 7 novels, and it's difficult, in terms of the exhibition. So many amazing things. I think the thing that I enjoyed the best was, you get letters from Jackie Onassis and John Updike and Doris Lessing, and all of the, Harold Macmillan. After he retired from politics, went back to Macmillan's, the publishers, and so you've got these sort of big figures. Elizabeth Taylor, you get big names. But what got me was what brought out the aspects of Spark's personality that I really enjoyed was a letter there was a chap who writes to her following the Abbess of Crewe, and he says, I work at the British Museum, and I'm writing to object about the passage in the book where Sister Winifred is arrested in the gents' toilets of the British Museum wearing a Sydney Sussex tie. And, I didn't know Sydney Sussex was a college at Cambridge University. But anyway, found that out, and he says, you can imagine the embarrassment this has caused me, given that, I studied at Sydney Sussex, and then I now work in the British Museum. It's, any chance you could change this in future editions? And what I love about it is that Spark just enters into the fun of the whole thing and writes back to him and says, well, I think, during business hours, you ought to keep your tie on and not leave it lying around for an innocent nun to pick up. But I'm sorry to have described it in such detail. And I thought this was in a pile of fan mail, and it just illustrated the fact that she did take so much time to answer fan mail. What I was astounded by was the amount of writers who send their stuff to her because she's well known, because she's famous, because she's a respected writer, and she reads a huge amount of material from writers at the beginning of their career and gets back to them and they say, I can't believe you've read my novel and you've given me comments on it. And I kept coming across this over and over and over again. And I know, she obviously received that from Graham Greene and Evelyn Waugh at the beginning of her career, and the simple assumption to make is it's to kind of paying it back to, but it just showed again that kind of generosity that I wasn't expecting. Perhaps foolishly, but I wasn't expecting the sheer sense of fun, the fact that she took so much time to answer fan mail, students' requests, other writers, who were just saying like, what do you think? I hugely respect your opinion. Any chance you could, tell me what you think of this? And she takes the time to write back. So that one piece was just her entering into the fun of this whole, a fan writing to say how much they'd enjoyed the absurdity of the Abbess of Crewe.
Did it change your opinion of Spark when you've done this?
Yeah, I think it slightly enhanced my appreciation for not only how hard she works, how dedicated she was, the sacrifices that she made, but also the fact that in amongst all of that she gave a huge amount of her time to other people as well. And the comedy that, as you rightly say, is there throughout the books, is there in her, in the correspondence and in her life as well. And of course that, makes for an enjoyable day at the office when you're opening up boxes and you're going, I can't believe, have you heard this?
Well, Colin, thanks very much for coming to do this. And should mention that all the future Muriel Spark things are on the Muriel Spark 100 website.
Muriel Spark 100, yeah. If you just Google Muriel Spark 100, you'll get the Spark 100 website where you'll get details of events by everyone and anyone.
And there's lots of stuff going on.
Yeah, so if you're, it's not just the library, it's organisations, your local book festivals, local libraries. We're trying to promote Spark across the whole country. In fact, down south as well. Just really, I think, celebrate someone who thinks a genius. I know you're a big fan.
Absolutely.
That deserves to be celebrated. Someone asked me, what do you think Muriel Spark would say with the whole centenary stuff? And I think about time. It's like,
yes. Yeah. Why did it take you so bloody long?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, I think that's the perfect place to finish. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Alan. Thank you.
And we'll be back soon with someone completely different. Cheers.